This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Hey, so over the past month, I've been engaging in the most tedious projects of my artistic career. First, I took on the project of animating a walk cycle, both sides, and then I decided to follow that up by learning how to make chainmail. My brain is mush. So this week, friends, we're gonna take a leisurely jaunt back into my comfort zone and do a little bit of sculpting. I've mentioned in the past on this channel, sculpting is kind of my comfort activity. It's just the right amount of tedious to scratch that part of my brain, but also, whenever it comes to sculpting, I kind of know what I'm doing. It's not too difficult. I made this critter sculpting video last year whenever I was feeling a similar type of way, so I figured it would be fun to do something like this again. And to get my prompts, I of course have to consult you, the audience. So I just posted these about an hour ago, so now all of the submissions have come in yet, but I still want to take just a little look so that we can see the general vibe that you guys want me to go for. Alright, let's first take a look at some of the Patreon submissions. Ratbone says, I think a barn cat, but more literal, a cat that is a farmer with a little sun hat or flannel or jeans would be cute. I also think that would be cute. The Crazy Cat _Reed says, maybe fairies made out of flowers. Evan Carson says a prickly alpaca. I feel obligated to do that at some point. A gargoyle bear. Ooh, gargoyle bear. This is a really cute idea. This is a contender. I love that. Detective Snake. Mouse Barbarian. Ooh, a dandy duck. That's also really cute.
Other submissions include cat in armor, a cat that is a knight or that has knight-like aspects, fluffy cats, wizardly cats, a really shiny or iridescent orange cat, a tiger necromancer except he only resurrects cute puppies and kittens, wizard/witchy cats, hairless wizard cat with its spells tattooed on its skin, cats with bug wings, a black cat with wings whose best friend is a night mouse and they fight together against evil.
The general consensus seems to be in the territory of cat.
As usual, you all made this decision very difficult, but I ended up settling on @catching.spirit6817 submission, which reads, maybe twin cats that are wizards of opposing elements or even sun and moon themed ones. That submission led me to come up with this design, nothing too fancy, just an orange cat and a tuxedo cat who like to do magic and crimes together, and they also have on little belts and sun and moon themed outfits. As usual, the first step in a sculpting project is to make a couple of wire and foil skeletons to give my clay kitties some structure. My armatures tend to be pretty simple. These are a wire running from head to tail for the spine, a few wires twisted around that for the front and hind legs, folded in at the end to stand in for the paws, and then everything's bulked out with aluminum foil and secured with electrical tape. For these kitties, I also wanted to set distinctive poses for them for the beginning, so I had decided the sun cat would look cute jumping on hind legs, and the moon cat would have a bit more of an understated sit with a dainty paw up. Moving on to sculpting, the clay I'll be using today is my preferred medium density Super Sculpey, and this box of random scraps, which is a chaotic mix of higher density Super Sculpey and some standard cosplay. But first, let me tell you about this video's sponsor, Skillshare. So last year, whenever I got back into sculpting, I was still painting everything by hand, but I have since welcomed a new member of my family, Mr. Airbrush. He's the bane of my existence. And I've used my airbrush on a ton of projects since then, but I'm still trying to get the hang of painting smaller pieces, so this week I checked out how to assemble and airbrush a miniature, base coat midtones and highlights with OP Shaker, which has been helping me to learn more control and detail with my airbrush, and will hopefully help me level up my paint jobs a lot more. But since Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, they offer thousands of other classes taught by industry pros on a huge variety of topics like illustration, animation, video production, productivity, creative freelancing, and many more other classes to help you level up your skills, hobbies, side hustles, and even your career. I really like that their classes are in-depth and detail-oriented. You can really sit with the topic, and the content isn't limited to an algorithm that wants everything to be as fast-paced and concise as possible. And since it's way too hot to do anything outside right now, the summer is a great time to dive into your next creative bucket list item. I've kind of personally been on a learning new things kick this summer with things like environment painting and design, animation, and chainmail. So since I like making little animations to spice up my videos, I'm excited to dive into the Procreate for Professionals Master Animation Learning Path in the hopes that Procreate Dreams can maybe help me speed up my animation process a bit. And Skillshare's learning paths are a great way to dive into a new topic if you're feeling intimidated, because they're a curated sequential class collection on a specific topic that will help you level up on a certain skill in just a few hours. So if you want to check out one of these classes or any of the other thousands of classes offered on Skillshare, you can do so for free, because the first 500 people to use my link will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare. Thank you so much to Skillshare for once again sponsoring the channel. Now let's get back to sculpting. After After making sure I have some oil of infant on hand to help me soften my clay, I can start kneading and conditioning a good stock so that I can quickly cover the armature in a quick base layer. I'm not worrying too much about the details to start, I just want to get a healthy coat of cat pudge to work with. Once they're starting to look like something, I can begin bulking a bit more clay onto the back and shoulder blades to try to begin achieving that cat posture. I also added clay to the heads and began trying to roughen the faces, which unbeknownst to me at the time was the beginning of a very long battle with cat anatomy throughout this entire video. This entire section of me roughing in this cat face, it means absolutely nothing. Observe as I helplessly add rolls of clay and trim pieces off of this armature, all while unsuccessfully attempting to recall any knowledge of cat anatomy.
Thankfully, my live model has decided to join us. Can we come? Come here! So now that I actually have a point of reference, maybe I can make these look right. What do you think? Does this look like your kind or no? So comparing what I've done here to my live model, I'm trying to really get that arch in the back that cats get whenever they sit down. They have like these real pokey shoulder blades, and then they have, you know, the cat button, this spot. For some reason, the way cats' heads connect to the rest of their body is like eluding me. What's so hard about this? I think that I'm also adding just too much girth to the hind legs. I'm just so used to the defined hind legs of a dog that I'm not taking into account these little guys here. Oh, she's mad at me. I need your help. You know what I mean? Like, it's not bad, but if I saw this out of context, I would be like,
ma'am, that's a dog?
No, I think this one is maybe slightly better, but still. It's the hind legs, and frankly the front legs as well, and I think that's a problem for what my goal here is today. I think I'm in better hands now that my live model is on duty, but I'm gonna have to really make a conscious effort to make these cats look like cats, because they look like dogs right now. Thank you for your service.
After adding a lot more bulk to both sculptures and generally futzing around, trying to get them closer to my reference photos, and giving the faces another go, and another go, and deciding I hated it again, I decided I wanted to give them a shot with a higher density clay and cut the existing head off of this cat. I then began rolling out a new larger head with larger eyes since that was one of my proportional issues. I then added a bit of clay to the top of the eyelids to begin setting the eyes more naturally in the face. I rolled out what looks like a tiny butt to start shaping the snout, and I added some clay rolls below the eyes to start building out the cheeks. After shaping the top of the nose and defining the corners of the mouth, I can add a tiny dot of clay under the muzzle to be the bottom lip, shape the inner and outer corners of the eyes, and bulk out the cheeks a little bit more. The final steps for this face were to bulk a little bit more clay onto the forehead, add a little bit more definition to the nose and muzzle area, and generally smooth out the face with some baby oil. After testing this head on my existing model, I was a little disappointed in the proportions so far, but decided to move on to the next head anyways. I began the other head the exact same way I did with the first, but this time with a slightly happier expression. As I continued sculpting, this cat ended up having slightly sharper facial features compared to the first cat, and I like that differentiates their personalities a bit. After I was finished with my two floating cat heads, I decided to return them to their bodies, shave the mass of the heads in a few places to make the proportions work a little better, and set the heads in place with a little clay. Although, I still went to bed that night with a certain fear that this cat was beginning to look a little too much like this dragon.
In the bold light of day on a less caffeinated brain, they look fine. They literally are fine. I was just being dramatic. Crafters, don't you love it whenever your perfectionism gene tries to ruin your entire week?
But enough struggling, because it's finally time to get to my favorite part of the sculpting process, the fashion. I don't know why, but sculpting clothes and accessories with polymer clay is so satisfying. It's like all the best parts of sewing a cute outfit without the actual sewing. I love it. It's great. So first off, both of these cats need wizard hats, so I did this by cutting out a circle the size of the diameter of a spray paint can, cutting a baby oil cap size circle out of that, cutting a watermelon slice and folding it into a cone with a tiny bell on the very end of it, and attaching that into the hole of the big circle. I also like adding tiny details to clay clothing like stitch lines around the cone and brim, and on the moon cat's hat I engraved a bunch of tiny star and moon shapes as a guide for painting later on. For the Sun Kitty's cloak, I cut out a general cloak shape and carefully adjusted it with my hands to wrap around the neck and have a popped collar. I also added seam lines to that to bring a little bit more detail, then added a little bobtail to my cap before permanently attaching the cloak to my sculpture. Next, my cats needed some ears, so I cut out some general ear shapes complete with fluff and even a couple of earrings, and carefully attached them onto the hat as if they're coming through theoretical ear holes. I also sculpted a tiny sun and star brooch to give the hat a little bit more detail, and added some similar details to the front of the cloak, and carved a sun insignia into the back to make it even more fancy. Shifting back to the moon cat, before assembling he needed a long fluffy tail to be the antithesis of our bobcat. The moon cat also got similar ears attached to the hat, and the hat got finished off with a little ribbon around the cone that ties in the back into a bow. Moving on to the moon cat's cloak, I cut out another vague shape and gave it the same engraving treatment as the hat, and then cut out another strip of clay to serve as a different style of color, and this cloak combo makes this cat look like that anime character. You guys know what I'm talking about? Now that I won't be fiddling with clothes as much, it's time to define the toe beans a little bit better and add some dew claws. Then, painstakingly add every tiny little fur line onto this cat's body. And also there's an entire other cat to add fur to as well. This is not my favorite part of the process. After fully adding fur to the sun cat, I decided to add a few extra little details by sculpting a little spell book the kitties can hold, adding some ribbons to the cloak on the moon cat, giving them utility belts with pouches for holding important items like cat treats, and weird cat gloves because maximalism knows neither logic nor restraint. So after paying my live model for her diligent work,
Is this your payment? You've already had your payment.
it was finally time to get these fellas in the oven. Set alarm for 15 minutes from now.
15 minutes later.
So bad news, unfortunately the tiny cat wand didn't survive the bake. But instead, while the sculptures are cooling, we're gonna make something way better. Cat, sun, and moon wizard staff things out of some LEDs I had left over from older projects, armature wire, and hot glue. So the technique we're using here is very advanced. It consists of wrapping wire around a stick and squeezing hot glue onto it. In all seriousness, for the sun staff I was trying to get the top to look a little bit like flame, so I tried to add hot glue in layers and let it drip a bit. It worked well enough, and from there I just kind of covered the rest of the staff in a layer of hot glue. Now that's craftsmanship. With the moon staff, I mostly wrapped the lights around the top curve of the staff and added glue in a similar way. I also added a little dangly charm to fill the space at the top, and I also broke out the filigree molds to add a little bit more detail to both staffs. Off screen, I also made some cat-themed spellbook pages listing instructions on how to summon cat treats, which I think is very cute. With my sculptures fully cooled, it was now time to give them a quick priming coat of white before returning indoors to start painting. But before that, we of course need cat approval on these cats from the Supreme Overlord cat. And the verdict is apathy. A very cat-like response, I've gotta say. But now, it's time to break out my nemesis, Mr. Airbrush, who for once actually didn't give me any problems this time. It was very surprising. No sign of issues, I enthusiastically got into this painting process, only to realize halfway through the base coating of the first cat, it was the wrong cat, and the bobtail cat is the one that I should have been base coating. It obviously exudes more orange cat energy. So then I got into base coating the correct cat. The goal here is basically to make the body of this cat look like a lightly toasted marshmallow. That, or when you take a butane torch and add a little bit of caramelization on top of a creme brulee. This was one of the reference images I was using for the paint job on this cat. So the next step in the paint job is to take that toasted marshmallow and bring it down into honeygram territory. I added a little bit of orange and brown into the mixture, and I'm using that to add a little bit of dimension to the fur and shadows in a couple of places. Next, I'm starting to work on the base coat for our tuxedo cat. For that, I'm adding just a little bit of black into that same mixture. So this first layer is a little bit of a gray-brown type color. So I'm adding my base pattern and design with that just so it's not too dark. And once that main fur pattern is roughed in, I can go back with more black in the mixture and darken things up a bit. After that, I went back in with a white tan mixture and lightened a couple of places on both cats. I focused a little bit more on the underbelly, muzzle, and ears on the orange cat, and lightening up a couple of places that I had oversprayed earlier. And on the tuxedo cat, I added a white belly, white socks, a little bit more white onto his muzzle, and one little white tuxedo cat eye. Now it was time to do as much of the clothes painting with the airbrush as possible. So for the moon cat, I mixed up a cocktail of purple and this pearlescent blue to serve as as a base coat for the hat and cloak. This ended up being a really perfect combination, and the finish on it almost looked like a ceramic glaze with how it interacted with the engravings. Once that had dried enough, I went back in with a lighter pink and purple mix to add a little bit more dimensionality and begin shifting the hue a little bit more towards purple. I wanted to use a strong complementary color palette on these, and I knew purple would look good with the bright orange that I would begin base coating the clothes on the orange cat with. After all the base coats were done, I was at the end of my skill level with the airbrush, and it was time to switch to traditional brushes. I base coated all the belts and accessories with a rich red brown before moving into time-lapse mode to work on some of the more tedious details. The Mooncat's cloak got some purple dry brushing along with a little bit more dimension with a metallic teal, and the orange in the Suncat's cloak got dulled down with a little bit of yellow ochre. I started roughing in the sun insignia details, and then painted on many tabby stripes. I finished up my paint job on both cats by cleaning up some of the messy airbrush lines I had left before, and then going on to detail all of the many sun and star and celestial motifs on both of their hat and cloaks. Measure, I aged the pages in the little spell book with some tan airbrush paint, and since my friend Ellie has just given me her old gemstone collection, I decided why not bedazzle my wizard cats a little bit. I added a bunch of blues and silvers and purples to the moon cat, and a lot of yellows and oranges and maybe questionably greens to the sun cat. I added some to their matching wizard staffs as well, and I think the gemstones really elevated the look of the moon cat. I mean, everything is really unified, it's beautiful. As for the sun cat, I think overall the paint job could have gone a little bit in a different direction. I kind of wish that I had kept the cloak and the hat white, maybe white with orange and yellow accents instead, and maybe not added quite so many gemstones. It's still fine, it's still cute, I still like him. Sometimes your 2 a.m. caffeine brain just makes a questionable choice, but you still have to stand by those choices sometimes. But after a quick clear coat the next morning to seal these fellas up, it's time to join our new friends on a little adventure. It's the reveal. The reveal is the adventure. Thanks for watching till the end of the video. I forgot to record an outro again, so here it is. I hope that you enjoyed this week's installment of Little Guys to boost serotonin and good feelings. I'm very much in my Little Guys era, and I have no intention of stopping anytime soon, so if you have other little guys who would like to see me sculpt, leave me suggestions in the comments. I want to do more of these videos very soon. Don't tell anyone, but I think I'm building an army. I also might possibly be in my big guy era pretty soon. What could that possibly mean? You'll have to subscribe and find out whenever videos of that nature could release. Hopefully later this month, I don't know, but you're gonna wanna see it, trust me. Also, complete tangent, but I am trying a new compressor system on my mic in this video to maybe help it sound a little bit less rubbish, because I know that my mic quality on this channel is awful. So please let me know if this is indeed working for you. I am trying to improve that side of things, because trust me, I have to edit this, so it's not been fun for me either. either. Anyways, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video and hanging out if you did. But as always, the biggest thank you for this video and all my videos goes to my patrons and especially my executive producers. A huge thank you goes to my executive producers, including Cardia X, Rat Jams, Christina Quintilla Art, Call Me Ash, Blaze Ravenscar, Lunira, I Help, Faith, Mossy Raven, I'm running out of things to say, I'm not saying that name on the internet, ABW Makes, Sarah, Hopes and Crafts, Crimson Moon 04, Icecavan, Awendu, Liana, Ermler Jean, Anubix, Breeza, Sony, Brian, Phoenix, Rose Draconi, Freedom and Gus Gus, Cat, Dodo, Zyle S, Agent.Sketchy, Thea Maya, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, Megan Penland, Enozine, India Gloom, Hypnos, Katie, Sweet Winter Garden, Gravity Drop, I Hang Out with Cats at Parties, and Bean the Bread.